Hey guys, in this episode I'm going to show you how to add rain in Photoshop. Hey everyone and welcome to Kelvin Designs. My name is Kelvin and I design, and that's why it's called Kelvin Designs. Click down here to subscribe to my YouTube channel and get all these episodes as they come out, and click up here to get the free source files to this episode and every other tutorial that I make for free. And at the end of this tutorial I have a little sneak peek of my new Photoshop workflow course, so check it out. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to add rain in Photoshop. You can see the before here and the after here. It's really simple. It's a lot of fun, so let me show you. All right, so to get started, go to my website, kelvindesigns.com, and click on Free Lessons, and click on the icon of the lesson that we're doing right now, which is not this one, but it'll show up when I'm done. And just click on the Download Source Files. If you don't have a free account already, go ahead and do that. And then it'll download this folder right here, and in here you'll have 3 files: man walking JPEG, stormy clouds, and a few Photoshop brushes. So to start, we're going to open up man walking, and it opens up this photo of a guy walking on some tracks, and daylight, no clouds, totally white sky. So we can actually use this to our advantage, the fact that there's white skies, so we're going to do that. The first thing we're going to do is go back to the Finder and grab the stormy clouds and just double click on that. There we go, and it opens up here. And just go ahead and drag that over to this first layer, this first file rather, okay? All right, the next thing we're going to do is let's zoom out a little bit. So Command Option minus, or a PC it's Control Option minus. Go ahead, let's do a free transform. So we go to Edit and Free Transform, or Command T. All right, and let's just shrink this. To shrink this, hold on the Shift key to keep the proportions straight so it doesn't squeeze it out of proportions. And actually, go ahead and escape. We're going to do one thing before we do that. It's very important. Turn this layer here, which we can call Sky, turn that into Multiply. All right, so now we're basically seeing through it. And that way we can place it right. I want the sun to be right behind him because there's some sort of light source that's behind him. So I want to use that already existing light source. So go ahead and do that. All right, so back here, free transform. All right, now the sun is right here, okay? So this is very important. When you do free transforms, let's zoom out a little bit further, you notice that I have all my corners here, and then the center is right here. So if I do Alt and Shift when I do and take one of the corners, it reduces or enlarges the image based on this axis point. So the axis point I really want is right here. So I just take this and drag it right here, and now when I do Alt and Shift, you see that it's scaling based on that point. So that's very important. I like that. All right, let's make this as small as we can and bring it down. It's okay if it's a little lower than in the horizon. I'm really taking this I'm using the arrow keys, by the way, left, right, up, down, and we can zoom in a bit. I want the sun to be right behind him, and I want this horizon line to be as low as possible, okay? All right, hit OK, and we're good. So now we're going to hold on the Alt key and click on the mask button right here. And what that does is it creates a mask that's totally black. That means it hides everything. All right, so now we're going to take a brush and make sure that it's white in the front. So hit this little default button right here, white in the front. And let's see, what do we got? Size-wise, let's just take this. Let's make it pretty big, something like 400 is pretty good. Hit return. All right, and now make sure the opacity is up at 100, so that's good. And just brush here. I'm brushing in the mask. And let's zoom in a little bit. Brush in here, and I want to purposefully go a little bit over some of these trees. Let's make this brush bigger. You can do this also by Control and Alt. Make that a little bigger. Left and right makes it bigger. Up and down makes it harder, softer. Keep it as soft as you can, and about this size, okay? So because we're in multiply, it's adding, and because it's white behind, we're adding to white. So it's almost like a perfect blend right here, okay? All right, now we can see the horizon down here, which we're going to get rid of in a second. So go with a smaller brush and then hit inverse, so the black is in front now, and just brush over this little line so we don't have that. Okay, good. So let's see that before and after. That's a pretty nice blend. Pretty nice. A little bit down here to get rid of. There's a little bit of that horizon. We don't want that line. Okay, good. We could also, if I didn't actually check this, but it might be that this is not totally white, which doesn't really matter. It just adds a little bit of density. But if I were to brush white, yeah, you can't even see it. So undo that. It's very, very light. It's almost white. Good enough. All right. So now that you have the main clouds in there, we do have a pretty drastic change in color balance. Down here we're pretty cold, and up here we're pretty warm. So let's go ahead and create a color balance. And we want this color balance to only affect the layer that's right below. So to do that, there's two ways of doing this. You can hold down the Alt key, and in between the layers, notice how my cursor changes to that little arrow. That makes it so that this only applies it to this, which is called a clipping mask. The other way to do a clipping mask is going in here and hit Create Clipping Mask, or Command Option G. There we go. All right, now we're in the color balance, which is right here. So what do we want to do? We want to make sure that the highlights, which are really warm, and the shadows, we basically want to cool down everything. So let's start off with the highlights. Bring the yellows a little more towards the blue, maybe, and keep the reds a little more towards cyan. Let's see, what did that do? Before, after, it's a little bit better. And then let's go to our shadows, do the same thing, make them, ooh, that's too strong. So shadows get affected extremely quickly. So you want to keep these values very low. Like 5 is already pretty strong. And let's do this up here as well, -304. And look at that, it's already a huge difference. Okay. And let's do the midtones, and once again, a little colder, and a little colder. I like that. There we go. You see this kind of the cyan that we kind of have here in the brush. So we're trying to keep that, trying to get a little bit of that in here. So something like this. I don't think the green's going to help much, and I don't want it to. I would probably leave this down to 0. Okay, and then the yellows. Let's look at that. So we want to keep it definitely on the blue side, but not too crazy. All right. So let's see. Before, after. It's a pretty good color balance. Pretty happy with that. If we wanted to add a little bit of contrast, to add even more drama in these clouds, we can. And the easiest is probably to add a curves. So let's do that. Once again, I don't want the curves to apply to anything else, but just this sky. So make a clipping mask. And then, oh, I should mention, for those of you who've never watched any of my other tutorials, the options of my curves, by default, they are like this, light and pigment. So your black point's up here, and your white point's over here. And this means that if you add, here I'll show you, it'll lighten. And if you subtract, it gets dark because it's light. And light is on the basis that no light is darkness and all light is white. So I prefer the other method, and this is just a preference. It does the same thing, which is pigment ink, which means that when you add ink, it gets darker. So I come from a print background, so this is just something I'm more used to. So let's bring this down a little bit. Okay, so here I'm going to increase my shadows, darken my shadows, and bring some of these highlights in a little bit. All right, so I'm basically doing what's called an S-curve, and it's basically making your highlights lighter and your shadows darker. I kind of want my midtones a little darker and not too much in my dark shadows. Something like this, all right? So before, after, it's gotten a lot darker. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. So something like this. So what I want is more contrast, right? More contrast so that there's more definition in these clouds. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. So now that we have our basic sky, there's another cool thing that I like that I've noticed in water reflections, which is that some of these highlights and the highlights and the shadows are usually more contrasty when they're wet. So to do that, let's go over here, take the marquee tool, and just make a basic selection right up to the tracks, because I'm going to do this really to this bridge or tracks or whatever this is. So make a selection like this, and then make a new layer via copy. Okay? So that created a little layer that looks like this. It's just this bit right here. And we're going to turn this into a smart object. So right click over here, convert to smart object. And we're going to go and put this in soft light. So you see immediately that there's an added contrast there. So the next thing we're going to do is bring it down a little bit, okay? Something like here, okay? What I'm really looking at is I want this to almost look like a reflection, right? So the bottom is the reflection of the top, even though it's just a copy right now. And now we're going to go back and do a, where is it? It's edit and free transform. And we want it to be straight. Because there's perspective, I'm going to have to stretch it out. So bring it down a little bit more and stretch it upwards, all right? So that these lines are basically parallel, okay? So that's pretty simple. Hit return, and now another thing that you may have noticed in reflections is that they're slightly blurry, but going up and down. They're not just blurry, they have what we call motion blur. So go to blur and hit motion blur, and let's keep the angle at 90, so it's straight up and down. And let's put this down a little bit. We still want to get the detail, but I really want it to be blurry like this, all right? So something like that. That's pretty good. Something like that. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, right now it's everywhere, so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to, once again, hold down the Alt key and add a mask that masks everything out. Then I go to the brush tool and make sure it's white, opacity 100, and I'm going to brush on the mask to say, okay, well, I want this to be revealed all here. I want it basically on these tracks. On him is fine too a little bit, but I don't want it to really go outside of these tracks. I don't want it out here. So, oops, default again. And Control and Alt to make this a little bit bigger. And whoops, undo that. I want to mask. I went a little bit over here. So I'm just going to take it out so it's just on the tracks. Okay, I don't want it back there. It looks like a little bit of a shadow there. Okay, so before and after, we've added some kind of contrast here, which is good. And okay, good. So now that we have the reflection of these tracks, let's make an additional reflection of this guy here. So for this, we're going to go into here, onto this background layer, and let's just make a marquee selection of around him. We're going to have to zoom in. So Command Alt plus, and let's just make this as narrow. So I'm holding on the Alt key to minus this selection, minus this. I'm trying to make it as narrow as possible. And then we're going to take the quick selection tool, which is this one right here. And let's zoom in a little more and make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key because I have right now, this is my rectangular selection. I'm going to say, take this out. I really want this to be a selection of him. So all of this, take all this out. I really want just him. So we're probably going to have to go and add some stuff. So zoom in again. Let's make this even smaller, this brush, holding down the Alt and the Control key. And then now I'm just adding his shoe, adding this shoe, adding his hand. Ooh, see, since it's trying to detect the edge, sometimes it has a bit of a rough time when the colors are very similar. So there's a hole in here that I'm going to try to get just because it'll help with the illusion of that reflection. All right, we're done with that. Zoom out a little bit, and once again, new layer via copy, okay? And what does that look like? It looks like this. All right. So what I'm going to do now is, once again, free transform, and then right-click, flip vertical, okay? And then bring him down. I want the shoe. If I do this, it's going to look like this shoe is not touching the ground. His left foot. So I'm going to align this left foot like this. Hit return, and this goes into soft light as well. And that's not bad. I want his edges to be slightly blurred, so I'm going to command click on the layer, which turns whatever is opaque into a selection. All right, so that selection that I had earlier was actually saved by the transparency. And then I'm going to add it as a mask. Okay, and now in the mask, when I click on the mask, instead of clicking here, I'm clicking the layer, here I'm clicking the mask. I have these options here for these properties for this mask, and I can say feather my mask. So if you can tell, it's feathering the edge. It's making the edge a little bit softer. So that's pretty good. And I'm pretty happy with that. I might bring this above this other reflection, just so it's above it, get some more detail. But that's what I want. So I'm adding that reflection. All right, the next step we're going to do is create the rain layers. So go up to the top here, create a new layer, and let's just call this rain. And we're going to go ahead and hit this click this little button, and we're going to fill with foreground color, okay, and which is black. All right, and then we're going to go to filter and add some noise. Noise, 25% Gaussian monochromic. So that's pretty good. Hit OK. But now this is too small. What I actually want is about 1/4 of this. So I'm going to select something like this. I'm going to try to select about 1/4 of this image. Okay. And we're going to do new layer via copy. Okay. So this one we can actually delete and call this one the rain. All right. Now we're going to have to make this bigger, much bigger. So what you're going to do is hit Command T or edit free transform and make it bigger. Now it's important that this is considerably bigger than your artboard, because the edges of this effect need to be outside of this is your artboard, and the edges are not going to look good. So you have to make sure that this layer is bigger than the artboard. All right, once that's done, right click and convert to smart object. Okay, and then you put this on screen mode. Screen mode makes anything that's black transparent and everything that's white is visible. So next thing we're going to do is try to affect how many and which ones of these dots we see. To do that, we're going to do levels. So levels, you do image adjustment levels, Command L. And here we're going to basically bring this in like so, and then bring this in like so, until we're happy with the amount of drops, essentially. So this is pretty good. I'd say somewhere around here, a little bit stronger. Okay, something like that. We can always come back and, because we made a smart object, these levels are adjustable. So hit OK, and I'm pretty happy with that. And then the next thing we're going to do is filter, blur, motion blur once again. And for this one, I'm going to do 75 as the angle, and considerably longer streaks, so 60 is pretty good. All right, hit OK. Look at that, it's already starting to look like rain. Next thing I want to do, however, is I feel like in my levels, I have too many drops. So I'm going to make a little bit fewer both sides and make them a little bit sharper. So something like this. Okay, good. So I have a fewer raindrops. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so we can see that before and after. Okay, and then there's another thing. Because everything is completely in the same angle, we're going to make a copy here. So drag this to the new layer, and we'll call this rain 2. And everything is already done. All I want to change is go to the motion blur, and let's put this to make it like 80 as the angle. So a 5-degree angle difference. And then let's make them a little bit longer as well, and hit OK. So now we have 2 different sets. So that way it doesn't look like it's all one direction, all the same. And I'm pretty happy with that. I might go to the levels of this one and say, you know what, I want fewer of this one. So let's make them strong, but fewer, like so. I don't want it to be completely overwhelming. Before, after. So you can see this second layer, there's fewer drops and they're a slightly different angle. But it really helps show the randomity of these drops. We'll definitely have a wind coming from the right, a very slight wind. They're not just falling all the way down. Okay, so the next thing, this is kind of fun. Let's go back to the Finder window. You have this rain light brushes. To load these brushes, just double click them. And nothing else to do, they'll be loaded. Now when you take your brush tool, and let's make a new one, let's call this puddles. When you right click to change your brushes, if you go all the way down, you'll notice these 3 new brushes. I've added them twice, so I have them twice. But they're essentially in this rain lights, you have these 2 puddles and then this one. So we'll start with this one. Okay, hit return. And I'm going to affect the size of this brush by by holding the Control and the Alt again. And make sure that I'm on whites here, okay? I want this puddle to be white. So I'm going to click right here. That's a little too strong. So let's put this maybe 60, 68, something like this. And one over here. And make one that's pretty big right here. Something like that. Okay. And maybe make some small ones that are very low in opacity a little further up, like there. So these are white, and they usually get reflections or puddles are better seen over dark areas, right, as opposed to whites. Here you can hardly see it. So it's more interesting in the darker areas, okay? All right, and then the next one, we're going to take the second brush, which is this one, okay? And you can make this bigger too. Let's see what we can do with this. Click once here. I'm basically trying to make this a little random. Doesn't need too many. Honestly, I think this is enough. All right, and I do feel like this is a little strong, so I'm going to add a little mask. Take a regular brush, like so. Maybe a little smaller. And between, something like this. Okay, and with a soft opacity, I'm just going to kind of tone this down a little. This is a little too strong. Same here. I want it to be a little soft. I like that there's puddles and random sort of water reflections and so on. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's make another layer and call this small rain. So this is just to add a little bit of detail. Let's go all here. It's this little one right here. And I just want to add a little bit of splashes, essentially. It's like little water drops in certain areas. Really down here in the bottom, maybe around here. So it looks like it's splashing a little bit on this surface. So this is kind of up and down. So I will actually, so you can see the before and after with those drops. It's just a little bit of detail. And I'm not sure, but I might do a little bit of a motion blur in, let's do a 75 like our first one, but much smaller, otherwise they totally disappear. Before, after. Let's zoom in a bit so we can see what we're doing. So before, after, this is much too much because it's completely, this blur is deleting them. So before, after, it's basically giving these a little bit of motion. Let's do 6. There we go. I just wanted it to not be too sharp because it would never be this sharp. Okay, once you're done with that, we're done with the majority. Hold on Command, Alt, and Shift, and E. So on a PC, that's Control, Alt, Shift, E. And it creates basically a layer of everything that's visible, all right? And we'll call this everything, okay? And right-click this and convert to Smart Object. And we're going to finish with a little camera raw. So click on the camera raw. And here we're going to add some clarity. I'm going to add a lot of post-crop vignetting because I want everything to be very dark except for the sensor where the light is. Something like this. I want to add some split toning. So I want my highlights to be kind of warm and my shadows to be pretty cold. And then let's do that. Add some saturation. Add some saturation. So I'm basically giving these two split toning is adding essentially color into your shadows and highlights. And you can determine whether you want more of the blue, more of the warm. I kind of want it somewhere around here. So that's pretty good. I like that. Okay, maybe a little bit more. Yeah. All right, and then maybe I'm gonna overexpose a little bit because I've darkened the corner so much that I want the light to really come through here. And I'm pretty happy with that. I can add a little bit of clarity just to give that all the detail to the water, kind of like that. And I will change my white balance by 2 or 3, like this. I like doing that. It kind of brings the whole photo together usually, and bringing maybe a little bit towards magenta in the tint. And go back to the effects. I do want a little bit of grain because it's going to kind of bring everything together. So something like this. And that's pretty good. So hit OK, and we're done. And that's how you add rain. All right, guys, I hope you liked this episode, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you had as much fun doing it as I did. And if you did, hit that like button. It really helps me out, and share it on Facebook. It really helps me out too. So as promised, here is the intro to my Photoshop workflow course. Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you about my brand new Photoshop workflow course. It's a course I've been working on for quite a while, and it basically teaches you how to take an idea and bring it to execution, final product in Photoshop. And you get all kinds of problems when you have that, where your idea is maybe very fantastical. How do you find the photo, or how do you take the right photo? And you get into blending problems, and there's many different scenarios where you need some specific filter or a layer that needs to be blended in a certain way. So here we go through a bunch of different projects. We start off pretty simple with how do you make something with a reflective source a little more exciting. It's pretty simple, but through a few little tricks, it's actually very simple, but you just have to learn it. So here in this example, you can see the before and after, and it's pretty dramatic. Then we get into, we have an idea to do something fantastical. Now there's a lot of different elements here, how to make them all come together to really communicate the idea of, I want to do something fantastical and otherworldly. So you can see them all kind of come together in the final composite here. We then take another photo, beautiful photo by my friend Serge Romelli, and we wanted to make it a little more exciting by adding some exotic element to it. So we take the photo and we plop in the tiger and make it all blend together with this, color cast and yellow, light source to get some good color contrast and so on. And you get the final photo here. So pretty exciting. I really like the outcome of this photo. And then we wanted to let's try to make something very Photoshop-like. So we start off with a photo of a light bulb, put some water in it, put a fish in it, put some clouds around and some birds and a sun. It's crazy, there's all these elements, but how do you get them to fit together? That's the trick, and that's what you learn in this course. So there are many more projects like this, which you can see in the before and afters, but we really tackle subjects like, water reflections, refractions, shadows, and where the light source comes from, how do you do proper lighting and blending modes, how do you mask things like different layers or groups and adjustment layers. Anyway, all these tools to make proper composites and retouching. This is really the best course I've ever done, the most meticulous. I really took the time to start off simple so that by the time you're done, even if you started off fairly beginner level, by the time you're done, you know how to make composites, advanced composites, something that has complexities like water refractions and reflections and how to blur and lots of things to make things real in composites. Things that seem pretty complex, but just going through the motions are pretty simple. So here it is, my brand new Photoshop workflow course.